If you love colourful cooking, then you're going to love this rainbow layered cake by Nyam Nyam. We're going to show you in some easy steps how to bake one. Absolutely perfect for birthday parties. All you need is butter, sugar, eggs, food colouring and some self-raising flour. So let's get started. Start by mixing 750 grams of butter with an equal amount of caster sugar. Use an electric whisk for ease. Crack in 9 eggs. Whisk them in. You can do this one by one. And add 750 grams of self-raising flour. Then mix it all together till it's perfectly combined. In 6 separate containers, add 6 different food dyes and a spoonful of milk to each one. Mix them up and then add them to your cake dough. One by one in a floured cake tin, you can bake them in the oven for 12 to 15 minutes at 170 degrees. Take them out one by one, slice off the top and around the edge to tidy it up, and you have a very nice neat circle of varying colours. Next, you can stick them on one by one with buttercream icing in between each colourful layer. Now these layers are rather thin, so we want to take special care when handling them. Then cover the entire cake in buttercream icing. Smooth it all out. There. Next we can add on our rainbow icing. This can get very messy, but it's super fun and super colourful. Perfect. Look at that. If you're looking for a show-stopping cake for your next special occasion, then this special unicorn drip cake is the recipe for you. It may be small in size, but it's bursting with flavour, using simple ingredients from your kitchen like eggs, flour, butter, sugar and cream, and a little bit of food colouring. So, let's get started. To start up, we need some butter, 170 grams, with the same amount of caster sugar. Mix that together in a mixing bowl with a spatula. Whisk it up with an electric whisk if you have one to save time. You can then whisk in 3 eggs and 170 grams of flour, a little bit at a time. Making sure the flour doesn't go everywhere. Add 1 teaspoon of baking powder to that. And some purple food dye, or whichever colour you prefer. Now our mixture is ready, we can put it in our baking tin, which we're just going to lightly grease with butter first. A little bit of flour too, to stop the cake from sticking to the bottom and the sides. Spoon in your cake mixture. And you can do this several times. Put the remaining mixture into a separate cake tin. Bake at 180 degrees for 30 minutes. Right, now they're all ready. We can get our buttercream frosting. Add some yellow food dye, or again, whichever colour you prefer. We love the purple and yellow combination. Stick it in a piping bag, ready to decorate. We're going to slice the top off our first round cake. And pipe on our yellow buttercream icing. Layer upon layer, using our 3 cakes. Now we put that to chill, and then cover the entire outside in our yellow buttercream. Chill again. Add more buttercream. And you can just repeat this process depending on how much buttercream you would like to add. Now we've got some edible glitter, which we're going to sprinkle around the outside, on the bottom. Now time for our rectangular cake. We split that in half and start breaking it up. Crumbling it into cake crumbs. And then spooning on some yellow buttercream icing to stick it all together, forming a dome. Now that little dome we're going to cover in buttercream. Chill it. Cover it again, just like we did with the other cakes. And that's going to go on top of our cake. Now we get 100 grams of white candy melts and melt them with some double cream. Purple food dye gets added to that. And we're just going to spoon that on top of our finished cake. Let it drip down the sides. It's going to drip off that dome there. And for a finishing touch, you can get an ice cream cone. Use some edible glue and some edible glitter to sparkle it up. And there you have it. Sparkly unicorn drip cake. Dripalicious. A colourful rainbow swirl bread cake is not only easy to make, but also amazing to look at. Nyam Nyam brings to you a step-by-step recipe to bake this fantastic cake. Some flour, sugar, dry yeast, salt and food colours are all we need to make this yummy dessert. So, let's get started. All you need is 3 cups of all-purpose flour in a mixing bowl with 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of dry yeast on one side and 1 teaspoon of salt on the other. Stir that all up. And add 1 cup of warm water, mixing it with your hands to form a perfect dough. We're going to separate that into 5 bowls and add food colour, red, the next one yellow, then green, then blue, then purple. Now we're going to sprinkle some flour on a surface and roll each of those doughs out flat into a rectangle shape, and we're going to layer them on a chopping board. Red, then orange, then we're going to put on the green, then we're going to put on the blue, and then we're going to put on the purple. And you can layer these as you like and use as many colours as you like. It depends on what you prefer. We're going to roll that up like a swish roll. Look at those gorgeous colours. Stick it in a baking tin and just let it proof for 2 hours so the dough can rise. That's ready to bake at 190 degrees for 30 to 45 minutes. Once it's ready, you can take it out of the oven and glaze it with marmalade for a nice shine, ready to slice and serve. Perhaps with some jam. Yummy. For these 3 fantastic and super easy recipes, all you need is some butter whisked up in a mixing bowl. Once that's nice and softened, we're going to add some cake flour, pouring it in there, adding in a bit at a time, and putting the whisk on a low speed if you're using an electric whisk, so as not to make too much of a mess. Time to add a splash of milk, using a small jug and some mint extract. That will give it a lovely fresh minty flavour, and ready to whisk away. Yummy. Once that's all mixed together, we add green food colouring. Nice generous helping of that. So if it tastes like mint, it's going to look like mint too. Perfect. Time to grate in some milk chocolate. Yes, that's right, get a big old bar of milk chocolate. We're using Lindt, but you can use any brand you like. And just grate that in through a small grater. If you love chocolate as much as I do, then you can be generous. Delicious. Stir it in so it's evenly mixed up. No need to use a whisk this time. All you need is a spatula and some love. Now we're going to put that in a food piping bag with a serrated edge nozzle, ready to decorate our cake. Our delicious chocolate cake. Here's one we made earlier, or you could buy it from the store. Now with a big knife, slice it in half and add your chocolate mint buttercream icing in between the layers. Mint chocolate, my favourite. Covering the entire outside of the cake as well and smoothing it over using a plastic sheet. A few spirally squirts of buttercream chocolate mint on top round the edge, and stick in some mint chocolate there. You can use After Eights or any mint chocolate you desire. Yummy milk chocolate with a minty middle, and pouring in some chocolate ganache for a little pool in the middle. Look at that. Delicious. For our next recipe, we're going to get some Oreo cookies and stick them in a blender. Crush those up. Now, that goes into a mixing bowl. Next, we add some melted butter, just enough to help the pieces stick together. Mix it well, making sure all the cookie crumbs are completely coated in melted butter. And once that's ready, it's going to go into a baking tray. Spooning it in there. Looks yummy already. Just pressing it down a little bit, spreading it out to fill our tray, and using the bottom of a glass to squish it down so that it comes up around the sides as well, forming a border. time to chill. Now, get some dark chocolate buttons and pour some whipping cream on that. Stick that in the microwave to melt. Now our Oreo Tart base is ready, we're pouring on our chocolate ganache mixture. That was so easy to make, just dark chocolate and some whipping cream. Couldn't get much easier than that, could you? That looks absolutely gorgeous. Now we're going to just spread that out evenly using a spoon and a flat knife or spatula to smooth it over. There. And time to stick on our Oreo cookie halves. And how about a few chocolate chips in between? Filling in the gaps. Yum! Wouldn't mind a bite of that. Right, for our third and final recipe, we're going to melt some dark chocolate and we're going to stick that into a food piping bag and drizzle it onto some baking paper, lengthways doing a zigzag pattern, and then horizontally going across that. And then some swirls on top of that. So just lathering it on there. Right, now when that's done, we're going to put it aside to set. Meanwhile, get our vanilla cake and slice it in half. If you have time to make one yourself, it's super easy, and if not, you can buy it pre-made from the store. Now we're adding some white buttercream icing on there, layering it up and coating the outside of the cake. Smoothing it over with a plastic sheet. Ready to decorate. We're going to add our chocolate fence around the edge of that. Once that's stuck down, we can remove the baking paper. Look at that beautiful effect, using buttercream to make a sun pattern on top of the cake. And then some strawberry halves go in the middle to form a strawberry bowl, and some raspberries around the outer edge. Nice different shades of red and pink we've got going on there against the white and the chocolate. Add some more berries in the middle, some blueberries and some more raspberries into our strawberry bowl. Brilliant. And there you have it. Professional looking cakes in minutes. We all love a red velvet cake, but ain't it special when it's dressed up with cream cheese, baby meringues and summer berries? So let's get started. Add 100 grams of egg white to a mixing bowl and whisk until light and frothy. A quarter of a teaspoon of cream of tartar goes in there and 200 grams of sugar. Whisk it up till it's nice and thick. Now in a food piping bag, we're going to just paint on some stripes of red food colouring and spoon in our meringue mixture. Once that comes out of our serrated nozzle, we've got these beautiful, slightly red tinted baby meringues. Those bake in the oven for 1 hour at 90 degrees. Now in a mixing bowl, we add 100 grams of butter with 200 grams of cream cheese and whisk together with 50 grams of sugar. Once that's nice and smooth, pale colour, again we're going to paint stripes with red food colouring on the inside of a food piping bag and spoon it in. This time, using a straight edge nozzle, we're going to get our red velvet cake, which we made earlier or pre-bought from the store, and squeeze on our cream cheese mixture like so. We're going to continue this on each layer of our red velvet cake, and once we get to the top layer, we can start to add our fruit, raspberries, mulberries, and of course our baby meringues. A few sprigs of rosemary in there for some colour. And there you have it. Beautiful nude red velvet cake. An absolute crowd pleaser. Very fresh to look at. Super easy to make. Super delicious. Yum! Nyam Nyam are going to show you how to make this French classic dessert, opera cake. All you need is 20 grams of cake flour sifted into a mixing bowl. We want to keep this nice and smooth and we don't want any lumps. Now we're going to sift in 140 grams of almond powder. This is to make our almond sponge cake. Next we add 1/4 teaspoon of salt, mix it all together. And time to add our eggs. We're adding 5 eggs to this mixture. No need to whisk them in advance, just chuck them right in and whisk it all up together. Now we're going to add another 10 grams of cake flour and 30 grams of melted butter. You can just pop that in the microwave in advance. Right, once that's ready, we're going to put it aside, and in a separate mixing bowl, we're going to add 5 egg whites. Keep the yolks aside, whisk that up. Now this part of the process is very similar to when you're making meringues, if you've ever made those. We're going to gradually add 140 grams of sugar into that using white sugar, whisking as we go. Electric whisk is very handy for this. We can just keep it on a high speed with one hand and gradually pour the sugar in with the other. Now once that starts to form stiff peaks, it's ready. That is going to be spooned into our first mixture. No need to use a whisk for this part. And there is our cake mixture ready to go in the oven. So we're going to pour that into a fairly shallow rectangle cake tin using some baking paper just to stop it from sticking, spreading it out to evenly cover the tin. We're using a spatula for this. There, it's ready to go. And you can stick that in the oven for 10 minutes at 200 degrees centigrade. Let it rise and take it out of the oven. Now we're going to just slice off the edges to make a perfect rectangle shape, exposing the inner sponge. Right, we're going to get 70 grams of melted chocolate. We're using milk chocolate, but you can use any type you like. Add 100 grams of cereal to that. Nice crumbled up cereal, perhaps some mashed up cornflakes or Rice Krispies, even bran flakes. Stir it all together. Now we're going to add that on top of a layer of almond cake. So the almond cake we made earlier, we have sliced into a few slices, and you might need to make a couple of cakes in order to do this because we want to keep piling on the layers. So we've spread that over the top and we put some baking paper on top to turn it upside down. Now we get 45 millilitres of water and 150 grams of sugar with 4 grams of instant coffee. Mix that together, heating it in a pot on the stove, letting it bubble away. Keep stirring it, making sure it's all properly dissolved. Once it's boiling, you can take it off the heat. And that's your coffee syrup, which we're going to just brush and dab on to our sponge cake layer. Next, we get 160 millilitres of whipping cream. Add that to a pot on the stove. Let that start to simmer. Mix it up a little bit. Getting hungry already. Now we're going to add 160 grams of dark chocolate chips to that. Again, you can choose your choice of chocolate. We like it dark and rich. This is making our chocolate ganache. Very simple. Once that's all melted, we're going to start putting that on our sponge cake layer, which we've turned upside down. Remember, we've got the crunchy chocolate cereal on the other side. We're going to add a second layer on top of that. And again, brush on some coffee syrup. Next, we're going to add 160 millilitres of water and 100 grams of sugar to a pot on the stove and let it bubble away. Stir it all in, making sure it's dissolved. So once it's simmering, we add 6 grams of instant coffee. Keep stirring. Now we're going to add 5 egg yolks that we saved from earlier into a mixing bowl and whisk them up. No, I'm not yolking, that is 5 egg yolks, like making ice cream. We're going to add our coffee sauce that we just made into those egg yolks, a little bit at a time, mixing all the while. So you have to keep stirring and keep whisking with this recipe. You know, I'm feeling pretty ecstatic about this recipe. Right, once it's a pale coffee colour and nice and thick, we add 280 grams of room temperature butter. A little bit at a time, so as not to miss any clumps. We want it to be mixed properly. Worth taking your time over this. An electric whisk will really help you with this recipe. Of course, it will speed things up. So we're just going to move that away from the sides of the bowl and start to spoon that onto our sponge cake layer. This is looking fantastic already. Spreading it out evenly and adding a third layer on top of that, repeating the process, adding the coffee syrup, the chocolate ganache, another layer of sponge cake, and the coffee syrup and the buttercream icing. Refrigerate that until it's set. Meanwhile, add some water in a pan. Heat that up until it's simmering. Watch it gently bubble away. And we're going to place a heat-proof bowl over that and add 200 grams of chocolate chips into it. We want the steam underneath the bowl to melt the chocolate chips, stirring all the while. I can't wait to try this cake. It's already looking amazing. And whilst we're in the middle of that melting process, we're going to add 30 millilitres of canola oil. You can use any type of oil you like, even coconut oil for a slightly healthier option. It's very tasty, especially for pudding recipes. Right, now our cake is ready out of the fridge. We're going to start pouring on our chocolate glaze. Delicious. Let it drip down the sides, covering the entire top of our buttercream covered cake. Spreading it out. Yum, look at that. Gooey, drizzly chocolate ganache. That goes in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. And once it's set, you can take it out and start slicing it up. We'll just tidy up the edges. We like it to look nice and neat and tidy. Slice it into portions. If you're a perfectionist, time to decorate. Let's put a little bit of chocolate ganache writing on it. Let's write the word opera, of course, since it is opera cake. You could write a friend or family member's name if you wanted to personalise it. Little bit of gold paper there. Anything you like to make it look special. Delicious. French opera cake, fit for royalty. Nyam Nyam brings to you a cool Halloween cake decoration hack, sure to make your Halloween party more fun. All you need is 250 grams of ready cake mix in a mixing bowl. Add 3 eggs to that. 30 millilitres of oil, 60 millilitres of milk, and whisk away. It's as easy as that. Right, now that's ready, it's gonna go into our cake tin, which we've covered in baking paper to make sure it doesn't stick. Pour that all in, spread it evenly with a flat knife or a spatula, and that is ready to go in the oven. There. We're going to bake that at 180 degrees for 30 minutes. Whilst that's nicely rising in there, we're going to get 200 grams of butter and whisk that up in a mixing bowl. Make sure it's room temperature because that will make it much easier to whisk. When it's slightly pale and fluffy, we add 400 grams of icing sugar. We can add it a little bit at a time so it doesn't powder everywhere. Maybe half-half. Whisk that up. There you have your buttercream icing. Add 100 millilitres of milk to that just to soften it a little bit. We're whisking in between each ingredient that we're adding on a fast speed. And 20 grams of cocoa powder because we want our buttercream to be chocolatey. Super easy. There. Now that's ready, we're going to add some melted white chocolate on some baking paper. We're going to make our decorations using a food piping bag to create the desired shapes. So we're making some hands, kind of like a skeleton hand. The white chocolate makes it look like bones. You can really have fun with this cake design. Let's add a few bones, in fact. You can add as many spooky decorations as you like. If you just put your melted white chocolate in a food piping bag with a very slim nozzle, it'll be easy to make anything that you think is spooky. Chill those for 30 minutes. Meanwhile, get some fondant. We've got some white fondant icing that we're just rolling in between the palms of our hands, rolling it into a ball. Now we're going to start moulding that into a skull, squishing the sides, using some tools to help us because we want indents where the eyes would be. Taking your time to perfect this. making it look as skull-like as you can. And the mouth, of course. You can just use a sharp knife for this. Some indents for the teeth. You can add as much detail as you like to your skull. And if you're feeling really brave and creative, you could create a whole skeleton body. So we're just going to manipulate that a bit for finishing touches, just to perfect our skull shape. Right, now our chocolate cake is ready. We're going to put our chocolate buttercream on top. Nice generous dollops of that. Spread it out. Yummy! Covering the entire outside, all the way around the edges. Artistic, creative cakes like this do require a little bit of care and attention, but it's definitely worth it for the final visual result. Now we've got some pocky sticks, which we're just using to build a kind of fence around the edge of our cake. We've got a few cookies which we've chopped in half to create our gravestones. Writing on them has been made by dark chocolate melted through a food piping bag. A little bit of mashed Oreo cookie to look like soil. And of course, don't forget our fondant icing skulls. Now, if we want to be a little bit playful and fun, we can add our hands and bones. Coming out of the grave, as if somebody is reaching, trying to get out. And there you have it, a graveyard tomb cake. Absolutely fantastic and delicious to eat. Get ready to bake a perfect birthday party cake, pink and purple with a rainbow unicorn. All you need is some Italian buttercream, split equally into 2 mixing bowls. Add some food colouring in there. We're going with red food colouring to make a pink buttercream icing and purple food colouring. Put those aside and we get our vanilla cake. We've pre-made this earlier. You can slice the top off and then slice it in half, putting the purple buttercream icing on first. Once that's nice and smooth, we're going to add the next layer and our pink buttercream icing, of course. And then white, so we've got some buttercream which we have not coloured. That goes on the next layer and on the top of our cake. We're going to just smooth around the outside so we can start to layer our beautiful colours. So we're starting with purple and then pink, doing 3 rows of each colour, and then of course white. So we've got this kind of Neapolitan effect around the edge of our cake, smoothing those over and using a plastic sheet to perfect any imperfections. And along the top as well. Then it's ready to decorate. Right, with a serrated edge knife, we're going to make a line pattern around the edge of our cake. And then we're going to just square on some pink and purple alternating buttercream using a serrated edge nozzle through a piping bag. That goes around the bottom edge of our cake. Beautiful. Now, time to rainbow sprinkle on the top and a little along the bottom edge too. Ready for fondant icing to decorate. So we're going to just mould our shapes here because we want to make a unicorn. So here's the legs and the body, add a head on that, and some arms, and of course ears, hair and a face. It's a sleeping unicorn, so let's have the eyes shut. Now, using multicoloured rainbow fondant icing, we're going to roll them into sausage shapes and make a rainbow. And some clouds. Placing our unicorn on the edge of the cake, we're going to put the rainbow on top and take a slice out of a cake with a spoon, putting a little bit on the unicorn's mouth, and on his hand. Makes the unicorn look like he's fallen asleep whilst eating some cake. So cute. There you have it. Super simple and super